Paul Heyhoe. I'm one of the co-founders of Blackstar, the brand director, so I particularly look after the look, the feel of Blackstar products. My background is I spent 10 years in the UK running a guitar store. We were one of the first stores to develop an online platform, and through doing that I got a job at Marshall, and that's where I was lucky enough to meet the other bald men that started Blackstar. So working at Marshall was an amazing learning experience. To have a drawing cabinet full of all those classic designs that Ken Brand and the rest of the guys had come up with was really an amazing experience, and we're so privileged to have gone through that time. Yeah, and obviously I met some amazing people and made some fantastic friends at that time as well. So I'm not an engineer, but I do have quite an engineering approach, quite a structured approach, even though I've got more of a sales and marketing background. The really brilliant thing about the four of us that started Blackstar is that we had really complementary skill sets, like being in a band really. So each person had their own role and they all complemented each other. It was really important to us to work as a team. We've all been in bands a number of times over the years, and even if we thought maybe they would be successful, none of them really did. But when the four of us started working together at Blackstar, we just knew there was a chemistry. We really felt there was a real potential there to do something really special. And so we often say it's like the best band we were never in. Bruce is a technical genius, so he grew up around valve amplifiers when he was a child. His father was an engineer on BBC radio transmitters back when they were all valve powered. So he grew up around valve technology, which is kind of really unusual these days. But he wasn't precious about that either. He embraced digital and solid state technology. But obviously with heritage brands particularly, there are some restrictions really, or limitations in perhaps what players want from those brands. And we knew we had lots of ideas in terms of how to innovate and create new kinds of sounds that maybe wouldn't fit in with a traditional heritage brand. So that's really was the driving force between the four of us. We knew we worked really well together, and we really felt we had something new to offer, which is why we decided to start Blackstar. It's really important for us that the last thing we wanted to do was just produce more of the same. You know, there's a lot of products out there. For us, it's the why. The thing that gets us excited in the morning is understanding why guitar amps sound the way they do and looking at how we can improve them. So giving musicians the ultimate tools for self-expression was really important. You know, we're all massive music fans and musicians, so we really wanted something to give players tools that excite them and drive that creativity. There were many challenges at the start. Basically, there were 3 years between when we all left Marshall and when the company launched. During that time, we were doing technical research, working on our first products. All of that was done in Ian's garden shed. It's a small market town in the UK called Northampton, which is famous for shoes and now amplifiers, hopefully. In the summer, it was very, very hot. And in the winter, it was covered in snow. So it was a really challenging environment. But the brilliant thing is, in order to design amplifiers, you don't need tons of equipment, you know, with a few scopes, soldering irons and stuff. So we were able to really, so the Series 1, Artisan and the HT valve pedals were all developed in the garden shed. So if you can imagine sound testing a 200 watt Series 1 head in a garden in the middle of a small sleepy street. I don't know how we didn't get the police called on us, but somehow we managed to avoid it. We have what we call the amp torture room. Bruce developed a software test system. So we put an amp on test, so loads of sensors all over it, and then we run a live guitar signal into it on loop, and it turns it on, turns it off, turns the power up, down, over voltage, under voltage. We do all these things to simulate within a couple of weeks years of real world use. So step one is it has to survive that. It has to get through all of that process. Once it's done that, the next step is we push it and push it and push it until eventually it dies. And then what we do, because of the sensors, we're able to tell exactly where and when there was a failure. And then we look at that area and is there anything else, any additional protections or improvements that need to be made? Because for us, reliability is numero uno. I've been privileged enough to work with some of the best in the world, and back in the UK now we've got a team of 40 people and a third of those are in R&D. Some of the smartest cutting edge designers in terms of valve technology, solid state, and digital. All of that is done in-house by our team. We don't outsource anything like that. I don't know about amp designers. The thing that thrills me is working with amazing artists and musicians. In recent years, people like Jared James Nichols and Carmen Vandenberg, and to know that what we're doing is giving them tools to create this amazing music and amazing experience is just, it's the best job in the world. I think there's always areas to grow, and I think the way guitarists play today has really changed. And I don't like to get hung up on the technology. For us, there's no sacred cows when it comes to getting a great sound. It's about using the right tools for the right job. We have our own plugin now, the St. James plugin. That's an area that we're excited to be involved in. We're innovating with our valve amps and our digital amps as well. Looking ahead, it's going to be an area where musicians are always going to want to push things. They're always going to want new sounds. And maybe one of the more exciting areas of the digital world is you're free from the constraints of the physical world. So with a valve, it's a physical component and it has physical limitations because this is the real world. But within the digital domain, you can take those real world constraints, but then you can extend them out of that. Fueling that creativity for musicians is at the heart of what we do. Because there are some things, unfortunately, gravity, all the rest of physical laws just exist and there's nothing more you can do about that. Once you go into the digital world, anything is possible if you've got the knowledge. I suppose in broad terms, one of the biggest challenges is all the distractions that people have. The phones, computer games, the massive input of information all the time. The challenge for us, particularly in the guitar world, we have something of an aging population in terms of guitar players. And making it more accessible, easier to learn, exciting and bringing young kids through playing guitar, I think is one of the biggest challenges we face. Lots of people start because playing guitar is cool, it's an amazing thing to be able to do, but a lot of people drop out after a few months. So getting that longevity, engaging with musicians and keeping them playing, that's our biggest challenge. The iPhone, Apple's our biggest competition. The PlayStation, it's not just about these, you got all these. Any advice? Well, the piece of advice would be to trust in yourself and your friends. You can do anything if you really have a plan and stick to it and execute it. At the time I had that belief. I look back now maybe and think I was a little crazy. But you know, when you have a good team around you, again, it's like that band analogy. You have a strong team of people and you're greater than the sum of your parts, you know, and so trusting in your team and your friends, that's so important. I'm an old punk rocker, so for me, quite a straightforward amp that gives me great clean sounds, great overdrive sounds. That's really the most important thing. And given that versatility and not making it difficult, and something when we're designing Blackstar, we always spend a lot of time on that user interface and that ease of use. A product that you can walk up to, put everything at 12 o'clock and immediately be getting a great sound, and then fine tune it and create your own sound. The greats that have revolutionized guitar playing, whether it's Hendrix, Van Halen, Pete Townsend, all these players, they were creating stuff by abusing and pushing the equipment out of how it was meant to be used. It's great to look back at history and learn from those people, but you know, if Jimmy was alive today, he wouldn't be doing what he was doing then. It'd be like, who knows what he'd be doing, something that would be blowing our minds. Guitarists everywhere, please do that. Try and do something really amazing, and we'll do our best to try and create those tools that enable you to do that. It's still one of the early ones really, which is the ISF, the infinite shape feature. And that's really at the core of what Blackstar's all about. It's changing that tone stack anywhere from an American type amplifier across to a British type. But the really important thing is because it's on a pot, it goes from UK plus a bit round to American plus a bit, but infinitely in between. So when I was working in a guitar store, you know, people would come in, they'd be interested in trying to get a sound, and you'd listen to the kind of music they were into, and then you'd try and match a brand to the kind of playing that they wanted. So for us, having something that enabled people to custom design their own sound was really important. In those early days, it was really interesting. So we developed the circuit, Bruce came up with this circuit, and it's really simple. So it's just one extra control, so it's really simple. When you give it to a musician that's maybe always played a particular brand all their life, when you explain it to them, they use it and they find their sound, it's never exactly where that brand was. It's like that brand was closest to what they want, but it wasn't really the sound in their head. And that's our tagline, the sound in your head. It's not us telling you what a good sound is. It's like, here are the tools. Yeah, find your sound, find your voice. That's really important. Nothing else, that's a patented feature. That's something that's unique to us. And even today, it still excites people because it's not just voicing the guitar. If you record guitar and you layer up lots of parts, you can use the ISF to just fine tune all those parts so they sit together nicely in the mix, which is a really great way of doing it. It's, not everyone's got a studio where they can mess around with mic positions and all that good stuff. Yes, absolutely, still proud, and that's on nearly every Blackstar product. It's a great thing.